Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Aegis here, back with a re-upload of my first video. So I decided to re-upload this video mostly because the audio on the first one is really bad, and it was before I had a pop filter. So I kind of wanted to re-upload this one to make it a bit more clear what I was trying to say, and I said a lot of decent things in that video that I wanted to restate just about the channel and about my general mindset about running this channel and kind of what I want to see come from it. So we can kind of start there and then work into the build, because I do also think the build is really interesting, and that's something that I wanted to elaborate on more and have a clearer voice on. And unfortunately, it was just really bad audio. It was my first day recording, and I didn't really know where to set all my levels and stuff like that. I quickly figured out after how to make it a lot better, but for the first day it was really bad. So I guess we can start with the channel. As far as the channel, I guess the first place that I started was I never claim, nor will I ever claim to be the best Bazaar player ever, or even a really good Bazaar player. As of this recording right now, I'm Diamond 4, so I'm not even Legend. There's a lot better players out there than me. I think there's over like 8,000 Legends or something right now. I don't only play this game as well. I play other games throughout the day. Like right now, I'm really into Thunderstorm, which is a WoW event that's happening. It's a Battle Royale WoW event. It's kind of fun because I used to play a lot of ability-based Battle Royales like Realm Royale and stuff like that, and Battle Royale. So I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, I don't claim to be the best Bazaar player. However, what I do think that these videos are to accomplish is to clearly delineate my thinking to myself, clearly delineate my thinking in a build to a viewer if it can help them out, and also for discussion. I think that like the biggest thing that I'd like to see out of this channel is to have discussions about certain builds, how to make them better, your 2 cents on them, and just kind of growing together. Like I said in the first video, I'd like for this community to grow together in a game that we just got, and a lot of us, are learning right now, and we'll most likely be learning up until release, because some people don't even have their hands on the game yet. So that's kind of my thinking behind why I run the channel the way that I do. The reason why I did commentary, I also stated that in the first video. The reason why I'm doing commentary and not doing something that's live is actually 2 reasons. The first reason is that when I'm playing the game, I normally have other things that I'm doing, and I don't play straight. That was a big thing that I saw when I play the game. I don't play. There's a lot of cuts in my videos that you may see or may not see. Because I get up, I AFK, I have other things going on in the background. Also, I think that reviewing him in this way helps me talk about the build more and talk about more of what I was thinking retroactively, as well as helps me review what I was doing and how that was good or bad for the game that I was playing. It just serves as an extra VOD review for me. So I think that's what I kind of want to see come out of the channel, and why I'm kind of doing it in this way. And I kind of wanted to re-explain that, clear and louder in the beginning of this video. However, this video it was a VANESSA FORCEFIELD build. It was the first one that I uploaded to the channel. I thought it was a really interesting build that utilized some of the shield scaling early in the meta that VANESSA had in order to place down a pretty effective force field build. Right now in the meta, we were really into the instant charge meta, like really heavily into it. A lot of the builds that I have coming up will utilize most of the instant charge mechanics and things, just because it's kind of the way that the meta has gone. But it still has some interesting items here and there. So this is the reason why I like these earlier videos, is because it allowed me to be a bit more creative and do more fun things, like a big crit force field VANESSA. But as of right now, it's a bit less creative as far as you do kind of need certain things to counter some of these builds, and we'll be going over what I feel like counters these builds the most. As far as the instant charging builds, we went over it a little bit on Dually the past couple days, and we'll continue to go over it, as well as how to build them yourself. I've built quite a few of them, so I have a few videos backlogged, just waiting to be made, and we'll produce probably one of those today alongside this, so should be good. But to this build, I think I said this in the first video, I kind of wanted to start as like the shielding poison build. I thought Puffer was decent. I did read the updates to Puffer and it gaining charge, so I kind of just wanted to be a shielding poison build in the beginning. I remember not really thinking about, like, I didn't think at this point I would go force field. But yeah, in the beginning of this build, I just kind of wanted to be shielding poison. I thought it was pretty fine identity, as well as barrel has always been one of my more favorite shielding items for Vanessa, and I do feel like it's decent this meta, if not really, really good. So yeah, that's kind of where we start. From this, however, I will say I'm currently trying to make a more modern force field Vanessa build that utilizes astrolabe, turtle shell, maybe a barrel, something like that, in a Vanessa build. I think it would be kind of fun. Like the instant charge, the instant charge update to the full crit or the big crit force field Vanessa could be a fun update. I haven't gotten that yet, unfortunately, but we're gonna continue. I think I'm gonna try for it a little bit later today, and let's see if that's a video that can possibly come out in the future, because I do think that force field is still a great item, and eventually when a lot of these instant charge items get nerfed, it's gonna be important, and I think that this is a really important fact. A big part of this game is like a lot of the things that people depend on to get wins eventually will get nerfed. Last meta we saw it with the raise and the freeze abilities and whatnot. This meta, it's going to be a lot of the charge items are most likely going to get nerfed eventually. So it's really important to know what other items do in the Bazaar and kind of how they interact with your board, so that when these metas change over, you're not just a Mobalytics build Andy that can't really do anything else other than build the builds of the previous meta, because you were so focused on only doing the things that were strong and didn't really learn anything else about the game. And I don't think that the game is too beneficial in that regard, or ingenuous to players, because it kind of promotes you, you know, building the same thing or trying to force the same, you know, infinite charge build over and over again, trying to force the same infinite knife build over and over again, whatever meta it may be. That's just kind of where we've been at right now, because of, I think, more or less because of the general lack of items. However, when the game does become full featured and all the items, you know, more items come in, more heroes come in, there's more variety, it's really going to be important to know how a lot of the interactions of items can work in order to benefit your board. So here's where we get the force field, and I'm like, okay, we're probably a force field build here. So the one mistake that I do is I sell off way too many items, I remember, but this is where we convert into being a force field build, and I understand how good Vanessa's shielding items can be. I don't find a turtle shell. It's not going to be a charge shield build. Like I said this a bit earlier in the meta, I think this is actually the first day that the patch came out, if I had to remember. But there, a mistake is made. I mentioned this in the first video too. I sell off too many items, and we don't have enough non-weapon items to charge the barrel. The barrel is really the main way that we deal damage and shield, so selling off all those non-weapon items was not good. That was definitely a mistake. And then there was a powdered flask there that I possibly could have brought just as a non-weapon item that uses itself to charge the barrel. So there's a couple things here and there. As I said in the beginning, I don't consider myself the best Bazaar player. I will make a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? This channel isn't about being the best yet, you know what I mean? Or maybe even ever. It's just about the fact that I really enjoy the game, and I really like discussing the game. I kind of want, you know, feedback on my builds, as well as to just have a general discussion about the game and about, you know, certain power spiky items and whatnot. And to get your guys' thoughts too. That's really what this channel is about. And if I can help anyone along the way, or if you guys can help me along the way, that I think that's awesome, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, with that, we just narrowly win this one. Kind of crazy, but I think because they're running claw and we're running force field, it's a little bit faster. We're able to just win it, as well as our barrel gets a comparable size to theirs. If not, I think they're both at 375 at the end of that, so that's pretty good. So right now I'm just trying to stack up on as many non-weapon items as possible. I don't really, like I said, early in the meta, so not really aware about turtle shell, not really aware about some of the other things that are really, really good and seen as vital to VANESSA in this meta. It just kind of is what it is right now, but I think that this build still is really good eventually. It does end up working out. So yeah, another thing with this one is that there's probably not going to be any game audio, unfortunately, because the original file that this video was recorded on, as far as the raw file, is I deleted it, thinking that I was going to make this video. I've since learned not to delete the raw files, but I deleted the raw file of the original video. So this one is actually the recording from YouTube, which has me talking over it. So the audio is definitely muffled, but I'll probably just throw a song in the background or something like that, and it should be fine. So yeah, right now it's just about, what I'm thinking about is just trying to give as much shield to the force field as possible. I think that I really wanted to use that shell eventually, get like another aquatic item, and we get the seashell, which works to charge the shell. And this is actually okay now. We go from it being bad to it being okay. You know, the star charts reducing the cooldown and increasing the crit of those two items, and we buy the coral armor, which I do think was a little greedy there. We sell off the star charts and put in the coral armor. I think we should just put the, you know, we have 30 gold. Should just put the star charts away. We might not have needed them, but we don't have anything in our stash, so it would have been interesting, at least as a point to keep. One thing that you'll probably notice that I don't do more than other players, and I've started doing it more, I don't know why I haven't been doing it in some of these videos, but I don't keep a huge stash, and I don't think that that's a good thing, I'll say. You want to keep as many items in your stash that you think eventually will be useful as possible, or passively garner you something. Personally, I don't have too many items in my stash in some of these videos. And I've been looking into that, and you'll see into some of the future videos, like there's more items passively garnering things in my stash and whatnot. I was pretty good at that in the beginning of the game, but I feel like now, since I'm kind of streamlined on making builds, sometimes I forget about picking up that stuff, and that stuff is really important to pick up, because they make your game a lot easier, whether it be, you know, whatever resource they benefit, whether it be gold, health, or experience. It makes your game a lot easier, right? And that's what they're there for. There to be actually used. So we pick up the boots here. Just a decent haste item. I want to eventually probably sell those off. But again, from the shiny beast video, boots are also a great item by themselves. Maybe not as much in this meta anymore, because of the instant charge. But when we are back into like haste matters meta, haste matters just as much as charge meta, boots are a really good item just by themselves to keep on the board. If you want to garner haste between two items, they're a 4-second item. They're a little bit, the way that I view boots is like as an item, they're a little bit weaker than Captain's Wheel, because you normally want it to haste a larger item, but unfortunately, you know, Captain's Wheel actually charges itself every time you use that larger item. Boots don't. So that's the biggest difference there. However, it's still a way to add haste to your build, and I think they're still very, very viable. I showcased that in the shiny beast video that I had a little bit ago. We get I think we get hasted boots at like gold tier, and it's really insane. So here we get the temporary shelter. So now I think I start like, I'm like, okay, I start processing. I'm like, I think we use this and we start, we upgrade this because it's our shield scaling and it's our damage as well. That's the cool thing about force field. A couple really strong things about force field that I don't think people think about. Your damage scaling comes innately from another item, so you don't have to scale both your weapon and your shield item. You just have to scale your shield item, right? Because your damage, you do deal damage based on how much shield that you do. Another huge thing about force field in this meta is we have a lot more limited upgrade options, right? So it's like at level 7 you get upgrade, silver or bronze, I think. And at like level 4 you get upgrade of bronze. It's like around those times. You have more limited upgrade options up to 10. What force field enables you to do in metas like this, and I hope that they keep skills and rewards and upgrade rewards somewhat on this parity, because I do kind of like the way that they work in this meta where everyone kind of gets the same thing. What force field enables you to do is it's not an item that you have to upgrade. You can keep a bronze force field until the last day, because force field, when it upgrades, it only gains 10 shield, and you're not shielding based off, you're never in your build shielding based off of force field. So what that enables you to do is completely scale your build outside of force field, yet have a large item that you don't need to upgrade, that you don't need to scale, and that just sits on your board and is extremely effective. And that's why I really, really like force field personally. But we do take a couple hard losses here on the way up. So it's not, it does take a while to scale, but once you get there, it's very hands-off as far as the intensity around the force field itself. You definitely want to always be scaling your shield. That's the biggest thing. You always want to be scaling your shield with stuff like this, but the force field itself becomes a lot easier to deal with because you don't have to scale it. I think that's a thing that not a lot of people think about with force field, is the fact that it's just free. A lot of times it's just a very free item if you have shield scaling that does damage. It's a free weapon. Almost every other weapon build in some way has to scale their weapons. Even all the charge, instant charge guys have to scale their weapons. That is a strategic strength to force field. So yeah. There's a couple weapons in the game that are like that, where you don't really need to upgrade them for them to be super duper effective, but force field is like one of the better ones. Then we get lefty loosey here, and probably gonna use that on the barrel. Okay, that makes sense somewhat. Probably should have used that on the pearl though. Let's see what goes off more. Yeah, I think we should have. I think the pearl goes off. Yeah, we should have used that on the pearl. I think. I don't know. It's hard to tell because we only technically. I always feel like barrel's supposed to be an aquatic item, but it's not. It's just a normal item. I don't even think it's a tool. I think it's just a medium item, which is kind of weird. Because it does feel like it should be an aquatic item, but it's the fact that it's not means that it's not hasting, or the shell's not getting charge off of it, and that's why I sell it off here for the captain's wheel, because I'm like, we're not getting a lot of value out of that. Now with the captain's wheel broad, we only really have the captain's wheel and the temporary shelter going off to give the barrel shield, so we're not getting really a lot of effectiveness out of that either. So we're gonna try and pivot off of that eventually. But I do think that the captain's wheel is probably night and day better than the shell and the seaweed. However, what I would have done, I think in retrospect, is sold off the barrel and kept the shell and the seaweed instead of keeping the barrel. because the barrel just doesn't empower enough for the shield to be that meaningful. The shell, I think, over the course of the fight might shield more, and then we also get infinite shield heal scaling against, you know what I mean, maybe poison builds that allow us to hang on a little bit more to get off the force field. So I do think that the play there possibly was to sell off the barrel and keep the other two. But for right now, this is okay-ish. However, against this build, it's definitely not. We get absolutely rocked. A lot of burn damage with the lighthouse. Lighthouse is actually a very decent item. So are eels in this meta. Anything that you can get to charge itself, especially like the things. This is why shield bash is so insane. Is it does something when your enemy does something. Like a lot of the skills that say, oh, when your enemy uses a non-weapon or when your enemy uses a weapon, do this, are just really, really, really good this meta. Oh yeah, I forgot. I concede this game. I do concede this game. I forgot. This is one of the reasons why I made this my first video, because it showed I never talked about the mental. Yeah, so I concede this game, and I think the game should be over, right? And we'll talk about it when we come back in. I forgot. I'm in a good mood right now, but my mental state during this game wasn't the greatest, if I remember. And I kind of want to talk about that. I gave up on this build because I couldn't buy the temporary shelter, and it pissed me off that I didn't have the econ at the time to buy the temporary shelter. However, we come back in, we still get B1, B2, and we're like rolled back a day after we conceded. So I don't know if I conceded on like a server tick or what happened there. The game's still in beta, so I get it. But that's one of the main reasons why I think I made this my first video, is it ends up being a win that if the server didn't roll back, I would have conceded, which is insane, I think. Because it shows that, you know, as much as you feel like your build is over in the Bazaar and your time is over, that you never know what the game's going to give you. You never know the opportunities that are around in the next day. So you should always stick around. There's not really too many. I honestly wish, after games like this, I kind of wish that they removed the option to concede. I think that that's kind of a W take, because like it being there and, you know, your mental getting the worst of you, it happens to me. Obviously, you could see it happen to me in this game. I was really upset, and I thought that, you know, it was an instant loss. Your mental getting to you will happen. Removing the concede option, like Dota, would be kind of cool, so that it forces you to somewhat figure it out. However, I understand why the concede option is there, because, you know, these games can last forever. So if you have a game that you really, really don't like and can't get out of, you just kind of need to, you know what I mean? At that point, you're asking people to somewhat lose straight on builds that they made mistakes on. And I thought that this build was a mistake. However, with the deadly crit on the force field from the cult event, now shielding on the temporary shelter, I realized that, you know, I definitely prematurely judged this build, and we probably have a bit more room left to run. But you have to remember, before this, we had lost, I think it was 2 or 3 fights in a row. So I definitely felt like we were kind of done here. But that turn was insane, and it kind of keeps us in it. So I guess what I want to say about that is, like, you never know when your journey is going to be done, truly. You don't really have any idea, because stuff like this can happen where you get a shielded shelter and everything comes together and you absolutely start just slapping people. And this is one of my, you know, this is what inspired me to make FORCEFIELD VANESSA. So I'm glad that I didn't give up, and I'm still trying to make that work in the long term. Even in this meta, I'm trying to make FORCEFIELD VANESSA still work. I don't know if something like this would work now. Maybe if you got enough haste and cooldown on the temporary shelter, you could still do something like this. But for the most part, I think that this was just an early meta build that eventually ended up working out, and even then it probably shouldn't have, because like I said, I conceded. So it's very interesting the way that we get here. But yeah, it's just like a concede into an instantly powerful turn. I think I even realized in my head that it's like this game isn't like other games where it's like if you truly have a mentality behind your build and like your items somewhat make sense, you know what I mean? As far as like you have something that you're trying to achieve and like there's merit behind that, the game will, at times it can definitely work with you and work for you. There's definitely times though, however, and I deal with this every day, that the game will not work with you and work for you. And it'll actually actively, it feels like at times work against you. And those are probably some of the most frustrating times. And I would only imagine that that's how I felt here to be able to concede. But I just kind of want to discuss the mental part of the game, because like that's a big part of this video. Obviously with me conceding is like, yeah, just some of the builds that you're giving up on. If you think that you have a really good idea, I guess that's where I want to leave it at, is like some of the builds that you're giving up on, because this is what I realized from this video. If you feel like you have a really good idea and it can work out, you might as well see it through to the end, because you have no idea what could possibly happen. You don't know what enchant is waiting around the next event. You have no idea what else could happen to make the build interesting. And I was gonna concede, and I got 2 enchants in that one turn. I got shielded and crit, probably 2 of the better enchants that I could have gotten on my items, if not the best enchants. So it's definitely not fully worth it to give up as much as sometimes the game may seem like it's hopeless. And this did feel like it was hopeless to me at one point. I think to a couple people watching, they'll be like, really, this, you know, you had temporary shelter, you had haste, you had a decent force field. The biggest thing that felt pointless to me was the fact that I really felt like I needed to upgrade the temporary shelter there in order to, because we were already behind. It felt like we were already behind in days and power level. So I really felt like I had to upgrade the temporary shelter in order to make it work. However, it seems like I didn't need it. I needed a shielded enchantment, which it gave me. Or I think that shielding actually gives it more shield than upgrading it. So shielding enchantment is actually huge. So with that, we continue on. Now we're like a completely different power level of build. It's crazy how much one day, it's probably like one of the biggest days that I've had of this meta so far, if I had to be honest. It's insane how much one day can make a difference, because I mean, we go from losing 4 games in a row and wanting to concede to absolutely slapping people in one hit. Like this Isle here, that just dies in one hit because we crit with our force field and we immediately shield for 3,000 because we crit with our temporary shelter. Insane things that become possible. And again, we upgrade the temporary shelter here, so nothing's really lost. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, 2 days ago I was going to concede. Now look at where we're at. You know what I mean? You can also, like, this can be you as well. I feel like there may be a lot of players that don't like to talk about their, you know what I mean? Like wanting to concede and stuff like that. But I know it happens to other people too. I know I can't be the only one in this game that at times, you know, you feel like the game's kind of shafted you. You know kind of what you wanted to go for, but the game's not offering you anything around that, and you feel like it's over. Try not to give up on yourself. Try and see it through to the end. If anything, don't be like me and put the pressure on you as a person. That's probably one of the worst things that I do to myself. Don't put the pressure on you as a person. Just try and make the build work out as best as you can. And if it doesn't work out, you can at least say that you tried, and you can move on to another build. That's the mindset that I should have. That is not the mindset that I do have. I should practice what I preach. You'll find out a lot of times that I'm not the best example of that. That is not the mindset that I have. I definitely hold it super heavily against myself whenever I can't make a build work. And that's not the best mindset to have in this game, especially when you're learning, because things aren't going to work out, right? And I understand that practically, but in the midst of the game, I am very, very hard on myself. Definitely very, very hard on myself, especially when I notice I make a mistake. So I think that it's a good mix of both, though. Like, you want to be hard on yourself so you don't make the mistake again, but you also want if you want to be a really good player, you want to be hard on yourself and really recognize that that was a mistake and kind of be, you know, pound yourself a little bit for it. But also you need to realize that, like, as much as you want to be a good player, you're still learning the game. And that's kind of like my desire. I do eventually want to become a very good player at the Bazaar if I could. But I do think that, like, holding it against, you know, yourself can be a bit dangerous. So I'm thinking about this astrolabe, which now I think I just realized in this video, because like I said, it's a day one video, I realized that it's changed, and I think I said to myself it's terrible. It is not. It is one of the most broken Vanessa items right now. So yeah, that even shows that. I think I said to myself, if I remember, I said to myself in my head, like, oh, no one's gonna use astrolabe now, it's kind of useless. And now it's one of the best Vanessa items by far. So, you know, you never know until a build or a meta develops what's going to be truly the best item, the worst item. It seems like, yeah, a lot of the charge items just went ham this meta. People immediately figured out builds. And I don't take shield block here. Oh, do I take shield bash? Do I take shield bash? I think I re-roll the shop. I re-roll the shop. See, this is what I'm talking about. Oh, what, dude? No way. I can't believe that. Dude, now knowing everything that I know about this meta, holy, re-rolling the shop there was toxic. That was actually toxic. That is probably one of the worst plays. Do not re-roll the shop on shield bash. Holy fucking shit. That is a really bad play. That is, I won't curse a lot on this channel, but that is a really bad play. That's like a next level blunder, dude. I never even realized that in the footage. Wow. That's crazy. So I re-roll on shield bash to pick up reel him in. That is not worth. Reel him in's a really good skill. Shield bash is easily one of the best skills in the game right now. Shield bash reads, I think I didn't read it. That's why it's day one and I didn't read it. Shield bash used to read, I think when your enemy uses a item, deal 10 damage. And now it reads, when your enemy uses an item, charge a weapon 1 second or something like that. Charge an item 1 second or charge a weapon 1 second. It's absolutely disgusting and would have been supremely nasty in this build for like a rapid fire force field. But damn, man, I don't realize that. And that's what I'm saying in the early parts. And then I give this, what's it called, which it didn't really need it. I give the force field. So yeah, a lot of blunders here, man. This build was rough. Early days, you didn't need to obviously make the best choices to win. Nowadays, if you're running an off meta build like this, then you have shielded on your temporary shelter. I'm not sure if you switch that off, your temporary shelter, and you definitely grab shield bash. Shield bash is disgusting. A lot of people just lose. A lot of the top players will tell you that some of the times they just lose straight because of shield bash being in the game right now. And it could be like the reason why it's kind of frustrating for top players. I've seen some of their stuff. It can be pretty frustrating because shield bash is like it's kind of a dumb skill that can make worse builds than yours work, right? Because of what it does. Is just being able to charge, like any type of charge identity in this meta right now is absolutely premium. So the fact that it's a skill, a thing that you don't have to place on your board, that just ends up charging your weapons, is absolutely disgusting. So yeah, I'm a little disgusted in myself, I'll be honest with you. After seeing that, you know, this is a win. This is at the end of the day, it becomes a decently good game. But the two things that are the most questionable and suspect of this entire thing, and we even win this, I'm pretty sure, with him stoning our force field. But the biggest two questionable things I would say in this video, and definitely don't do it, is, you know, reevaluate whether you would want. I do the radiant shelter pretty quick. I would definitely evaluate whether you want the radiant shelter or not. I don't have the balcony yet, so I think possibly giving the balcony radiant would also give the shelter radiant. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but the way that enchanting the balcony works, and you'll see it a little bit later in this video, is it normally gives that enchantment to the item to the left. So when you enchant, I think I enchanted a hasted balcony, and it says, you know, whenever you use the item to the left, haste 2 items 3 seconds or whatever. So I would have to see how that works. But the biggest mistake is that shield bash, man. I won't understate it in this video now since I realized it. I just didn't realize it before. And I'm still kind of newer to the meta, so I didn't realize how disgusting shield bash was. Yeah, the biggest mistake that I make, easily now knowing the meta, and you can say hindsight's 2020. This is the first day of, I want to emphasize that. Definitely with the shield bash not purchased. Holy hell, I want to emphasize that. This is the first day of the meta, so I am kind of exploring. I don't fully know what's good or not yet, obviously, for me to not buy that. So yeah, it's kind of rough right now. I get it. But at the end of the day, I do think it is a really good build, even though we don't utilize shield bash. It would have been a way better build with it. It is what it is, you know what I mean? It's still a very solid build that kills people in a couple crits. It would have been really lethal with shield bash though. Really lethal. Because stuff like this, like as soon as he uses his probe, we just absolutely go ham. But yeah, it's like people on day one, like you have stuff like this, where people on day one, where, you know, he has marbles, he has the probe, he has all this stuff, but the probe's not really gaining damage because he can't slow anything. And that was something I indirectly did. I didn't realize that, you know, some of the builds that I was going to be going into, or the identity of this meta was going to be infinitely charging. I knew that things like ballista and some of the items that gain charge were going to be strong. I didn't know that it was going to be full infinitely charging items on board. And that's kind of like the true identity of this meta. I feel like every meta kind of takes somewhat of a true identity, you know what I mean? And the identity of this meta is definitely charge and fully charging your item. And yeah, we do go up against, like, that last build was a build like that. However, we just don't have the small items for him to slow with the marbles. And I don't know that as a benefit at the time, but it is. And that's another thing that's pretty good is a lot of times in this meta, you kind of don't want to run small items, I've found. A lot of the pigs rely on marbles, if they don't get a slow enchant on anything, to slow all your entire build down. If you can build haste between larger items like this, it's actually kind of strong, this meta. It's really weak against freeze if you don't get rapid thaw or desperate cleanse. So it does have its, you know what I mean, it has its merits and its weaknesses. But for the most part, I get, like, the best way to combat a lot of these instant charging builds is having some type of interrupt or having a better scaling chain yourself. And it may feel like against VANESSA, that's really hard to do because just innately Turtle Shell is like probably the most broken infinite scaling item in the game right now. Because it's infinitely charging item in the game because it's infinitely charging and infinitely scaling. So it's absolutely disgusting. If VANESSA has enough shield items on board, they just shield to 1 billion and you can't do anything about it. So that one's really tough. But for the most part, against a lot of the pig items, they're smaller items. They interact, the marbles only interact with smaller items. So you can win a lot against a lot of the pigs if you have better scaling and if you just don't have small items that are really critical to your build. Unfortunately, this game kind of moved away from, you know, being able to have small items that are super critical in this build because of stuff like marbles and whatnot. But yeah, this guy also somewhat figured it out, you know, with the ship, the matchbox, and the marbles on the end. But it's just the marbles don't do anything. The matchbox doesn't pour on burn in enough time. We're at a place where our crits are hitting for 6k, you know, our shield is getting up to 5k on a single temp shelter crit. It's kind of becoming tough for even a lot of these instant weapon builds to keep up. I want to get frozen shots here because I know frozen shots is really good when you only have fast weapons, because then it only triggers on, like, your slowest weapon is your fastest weapon. So like if you have an instant charge build with like 2 yo-yos and a probe, frozen shots is really good in something like that, because you know you have instantly charging weapons, so you're always going to be freezing something. We give the balcony haste at the Soraka steps, which now, like I said, when you use the property to the left of this, haste 2 items 2 seconds. So the balcony normally works off of the property that you're reducing the cooldown of when you're enchanting it. It normally does. I don't know if it's for every enchantment, but I know it's for a lot of the enchantments. It works off of the property that you're actually reducing the cooldown of. We're going to avoid Golem, and here I'm kind of feeling set. It's kind of the end of the game. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, like I said. The one thing that I will say I'm not sure is a mistake is the removing shielding from, and I think we get slow on the Captain's Wheel here, which is kind of good this meta. It's kind of better to get slow on items that actually slow, because it doubles their slow duration, especially if you have an item that slows that's not restricted by item size. It's really good to get it on that, but we don't really have any items like that, and slow's decent, definitely decent to be proccing consistently, so we put on the Captain's Wheel. But what I was gonna say is a lot of mistakes in, you know, we didn't get shield bash. That's definitely the biggest mistake. The one thing that I'm not sure is a mistake at this point in the game, especially since we can be heading into more freeze and slow builds, is getting Radiant on the shelter. I do think that at the end of the day, since we sustained through not having shielding on it, and we were able to build enough shield on it for it to be effective, I do think that Radiant could be argued to be better here. However, I don't think that anyone's going to argue, including me, in the modern meta. And this was a huge crit llama, just get absolutely destroyed. But I don't think that anyone with a nice phonograph next to it too. But I don't think anyone, even me, is going to argue that picking up Realm in over Shield Bash was the play. Like I said, I make mistakes. That is, I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna sit here and argue that that was a good play. That was really bad play. So yeah, it's kind of rough. But outside of that, I think the build came together really well. It's a day 14 build, which in the modern meta, it'd be insane to see a build like this at day 14, I feel. Probably not going to get to day 14 and actually win on day 14 with a build like this, just because there's so much bullshit in the game right now. That's just based on instant charge and doing the craziest stuff. And that's how most of the metas have developed in the Bazaar, and I think that's why a lot of people don't recommend the Bazaar to people who are trying to get into it, or recommend it to people right now, because if you get into it right now, as much as it's a fun game and it is a good game, I'm not going to sit here and be a Bazaar hater when I'm obviously sitting here and playing it. It is a fun and good game, but I do think that if you get into, we're kind of the guinea pigs right now. If you get into it in the future, you're going to have even more fun with the game, and it's going to have even more of a positive outlook on your mind, because we dealt with a lot of the annoying early stuff, and we're kind of into metas, hopefully in the future, that are a bit more balanced and a bit more free. And that's when you're really going to have fun with the Bazaar. That's when I had the most fun with the Bazaar, was in the beginning, when I got into balance, when I got into builds that were extremely fun and free and you could do anything with. But with that being said, that is, you know, it. Day 14, Morrow in the dirt. We're able to clean them up, and that's about it. That's the big crit VANESSA force field. A lot of couple mistakes. Shielded force field, debatable. Reel them in over shield bash, not debatable, really bad. However, it is what it is. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Peace.